Alex was always curious about strange things. He loved exploring weird websites and looking for unusual stuff online. One night, while scrolling through a late-night auction site, he saw a listing that made him stop. The title read, "Alien House, $200, must see." And the picture looked like a small, glowing house standing alone in the middle of nowhere. Alex laughed, thinking it was a joke. He had never seen anything like it before. But something about the listing caught his attention. The description was simple but strange. Completely furnished, unusual architecture, intelligent design, caution advised. Alex raised his eyebrows. Intelligent design? What does that even mean? He muttered himself. The price was too low. Only $200, he thought. Even if it's a joke, it's worth a look. Without thinking much, Alex clicked the Buy Now button, a small thrill running through him. Within a week, the house was scheduled to be delivered to a remote location he had never visited before. The day finally came, and Alex drove for hours, following the GPS coordinates. The road became narrow, cracked, and surrounded by tall, silent trees. The sky turning gray with heavy clouds. Finally, he saw it. The house, glowing faintly with strange lights, standing alone in a small clearing. It looked smaller in the picture online, but in reality, it had a strange presence, almost like it was alive. Alex parked his car and stepped out, his heart beating faster. The air around the house was still. The only sound was a faint humming, almost like a soft song. He walked toward the front door, the grass beneath his feet slightly glowing as he stepped on it. "Okay, Alex, it's just a house," he whispered, trying to calm his growing unease. The door handle felt cold, but when he touched it, it pulsed slightly under his fingers. He pushed the door open, and it moved smoothly, almost too smoothly, as if the house wanted him inside. The inside of the house was even stranger. The walls shimmered slightly, reflecting colors that didn't exist outside. The furniture was simple but had unusual shapes, chairs and tables that seemed to curve in impossible ways. Lights floated in the air without any bulbs, and the floor had patterns that moved when he walked on them. Alex stepped in cautiously, feeling like he'd entered another world. He called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" But only the soft hum answered him. Alex decided to explore, walking from room to room. Each room was different, some small and tight, others unusually large. A hallway stretched longer than it should have, doors opening and closing by themselves. Every time he looked at a corner, he felt like something was watching him. The air smelled faintly sweet and metallic at the same time, an aroma he had never smelled before. He touched the walls lightly, and they seemed soft, almost like liquid under his fingertips. He tried the front door, thinking it was time to leave, but when he pulled a handle, it didn't budge. The door was locked, but there was no keyhole, no reason why it shouldn't open. Alex's stomach sank. This isn't possible," he muttered. He tried the windows, but they were sealed, not a single crack or handle. Panic started to rise in him, but he forced himself to stay calm. He returned to the main room, trying to think. The house hummed louder now, almost like it was alive, listening to him. Alex noticed the lights moving slightly, following him wherever he went. The shadows in the corners seemed to stretch and twist, as if they had a mind of their own. He wanted to leave, but the house seemed to resist him. It was almost playful, almost taunting, but he couldn't tell if it was friendly or dangerous. He decided to sit on one of the chairs, try to catch his breath. The chair shifted slightly under him, adjusting like it knew he was uncomfortable. He laughed nervously. "Okay, Alex, you bought an alien house for $200. Big mistake." Suddenly, the hum grew louder, vibrating through the floor, and the patterns on the walls started moving faster. A faint whisper seemed to come from nowhere, words he couldn't understand. Alex froze, every hair on his body standing up. The lights in the room flickered, forming shapes that almost looked like eyes, staring right at him. Alex realized something terrifying. The house was not just a building, it was alive. And now, it seemed to know he was there, it was aware of him. He wanted to run, to escape, but every exit he tried refused to open. The house had him, and he didn't know why or how or what it wanted. The hum grew louder, and the lights danced faster, the air around him feeling heavy. Alex swallowed hard, his heart racing. He whispered to himself, "I just wanted a joke. Why did I buy this house?" And at that moment, the house seemed to pulse, as if responding to his fear. The adventure he thought would be funny had just turned into something he couldn't control, and Alex understood. The alien house had plans for him. and he might never leave easily. Alex could hardly sleep that night, the strange of the house vibrating through his thoughts. Every corner of his mind seemed alive, replaying the strange patterns of light and shadow he had seen earlier. He tried to convince himself it was all in his head, but deep down, he knew the house was not normal. By morning, he was too curious and too scared to leave. He had to explore more, to understand what he had gotten himself into. The first thing he noticed as he walked through the rooms was how they seemed to change. A room that had looked small yesterday now stretched wide, its walls bending slightly. The ceiling sometimes lowered without warning, almost brushing his head, then lifted again like nothing happened. Even the furniture seemed alive, chairs shifting subtly as if watching him. He reached out to touch a table, and it pulsed under his fingers, warm and soft. Not wood or metal. It was impossible, but he couldn't deny it. He was in a house that defied every law of reality. As he moved to the hallway, the lights floating above his head followed him slowly. Shadows twisted unnaturally, creating shapes that seemed almost human. Alex shivered. This is insane. I shouldn't even be here, he whispered. His phone buzzed, a weak signal appearing for a moment, then disappearing again. Even the GPS stopped working, spinning in circles as if it didn't recognize his place. He entered a small room that wasn't on the floor plan he remembered. Inside was a mirror, but when Alex looked into it, he didn't see his reflection. Instead, he saw flashes of himself in impossible places, floating in midair, walking through walls. Even standing outside the glowing house at night, he stumbled back, heart racing, unsure if he had seen a vision or a trick of the house. The mirror hummed softly, and he heard whispers, words just beyond comprehension. Alex covered his ears, but the whispers grew louder, echoing inside his mind. It felt like the house was speaking directly to him, trying to test him. He ran into another room, this one full of furniture that floated slightly above the ground. Books hovered in the air, pages flipping as if caught in a wind no one else could feel. A chair slowly turned to face him, as if inviting him to sit. Alex hesitated, but then sat, and the chair seemed to mold itself to his body. A warmth spread through him, calming and frightening at the same time. He felt the room's energy wrap around him, almost like it was studying him, understanding him. Suddenly, a door slammed shut behind him, and the room's temperature dropped instantly. A cold breeze wrapped around his legs, and the lights flickered violently. He tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The floating books now formed a circle around him, moving slowly, almost menacingly. Alex felt trapped, the house testing him, maybe even playing a game with his mind. He backed into the chair, trying to think, trying to breathe, but the whispering continued, insistent, unintelligible. Then he noticed something on the walls, symbols glowing faintly. They weren't random. They pulsed in rhythm with the house's hum, almost like a heartbeat. Alex leaned closer, tried to understand, tracing the shapes with his fingers. Suddenly, one of the symbols shifted, rearranging itself into something he could read. Observe, adapt, survive. Alex staggered back, his pulse quickening, the meaning clear, yet terrifying. The house was alive, intelligent, and aware of him. It was not just a building, it was a being, and he was its subject. He ran from the room, exploring more hallways that seemed to stretch forever. Some doors led to rooms that defied logic, ceilings high as skyscrapers, walls made of smooth, glowing material. Other doors opened to darkness, so thick it felt alive, pressing against him as he stepped in. He could hear faint whispers from the shadows, sometimes laughing, sometimes warning. It was impossible to tell where the house ended and the world began. Even the floor seemed to shift beneath his feet, guiding him towards some unknown purpose. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt meaningless inside the alien house. Alex was exhausted but couldn't stop exploring. He felt drawn deeper. He found a room filled with objects from other worlds, strange artifacts glowing faintly. A crystal pulsed with light as he touched it, sending visions into his mind. He saw creatures unlike anything on Earth, floating cities, landscapes that twisted and turned impossibly. He realized the house might be connected to a world beyond his own, a place where normal rules didn't exist. As he left the room, a sudden movement caught his eye. A shadow, darker than the rest, slid across the walls behind him. Following silently, Alex froze, heart pounding. It stopped when he looked directly at it. But when he turned away, it was closer again. Every instinct told him to run, but he had no idea where. The house had already trapped him and was learning him. He understood now. He wasn't just inside the house. He was inside a living, thinking entity, and it would not let him leave easily. Alex sat down in the main hall, trying to calm his racing mind. The floating lights above him shimmered, moving in complex patterns. He whispered to himself, "This is bigger than I thought. I need to understand it before it decides what to do with me." The house hummed louder, almost like it was agreeing, or maybe laughing, and Alex realized a terrifying truth. He was not a visitor here. He was a participant in something far greater, and the house had only just begun to show him its power. Alex barely slept that night, the hum of the house echoing in his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see the floating lights, twisting shadows, and symbols glowing on the walls. When morning came, he knew he had to understand what he was dealing with. This was no ordinary house. It was alive, and it was intelligent. He walked slowly through the hallways, noticing small changes. A door that had been on his left yesterday was now on the right. A painting on the wall seemed to shift when he looked at it. He touched it, and the colors moved like liquid, forming patterns he didn't understand. It was as if the house was communicating, showing him messages he couldn't yet read. Alex entered the main living room, where the floating lights danced above the furniture. He raised his hand, and to his shock, the lights moved in response, circling around his fingers. A thrill ran through him. He realized the house was not just watching him. It could react. It was aware of him, reading his movements, maybe even his thoughts. He experimented cautiously, moving objects and speaking softly. Sometimes the furniture shifted toward him, sometimes away. It was as if the house was testing him, learning him, understanding how he would respond. The walls pulsed with soft light, forming symbols that glowed briefly, then faded. Alex traced the shapes with his fingers, tried to understand their meaning. The symbols seemed to rearrange themselves when he did, forming patterns that felt like words. But he couldn't read them yet. Then he noticed something terrifying. The shadows were moving independently of the lights. One shadow stretched and split into two, then three. Circling him like predators, Alex tried to back away, but the floor shifted subtly beneath him, guiding him forward. He realized the house was not just a passive observer. It was an active presence, shaping his movements, influencing his actions. Every instinct told him to run, but he knew the house wanted him to stay, to explore, to learn. He entered a small room he hadn't seen before, the air inside warm and vibrating. A glowing core hovered in the center, a sphere of light that pulsed like a heartbeat. As Alex approached, visions flashed before his eyes, scenes of alien landscapes, strange cities, and creatures that defied imagination. He understood instantly that this house was connected to another world, a world where reality was different. The house had brought him here for a reason, and he was beginning to understand the first hint. A whisper filled the room, soft and strange, almost musical. Alex couldn't understand the words, but he felt the meaning. Learn, adapt, survive. He stepped back, heart racing, realizing the house was trying to teach him something. It wasn't just alive, it was intelligent, capable of thought, and possibly even emotion. The walls pulsed again, and the symbols formed a new message, clearer this time. Your mind is part of us now. Understand or be trapped. Alex stumbled back, terrified, but also fascinated. He realized he had a choice: to fight it and risk being trapped forever, or to learn its rules and survive. The floating objects now hovered closer, forming a semicircle around him. Almost like guardians, he spoke softly, asking questions aloud, and the house seemed to respond, the lights shifting with each word. He didn't understand fully, but he could feel a connection forming, subtle and strange. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning here. The house continued to test him, showing visions of alien technology, impossible geometries, and worlds he could barely imagine. Alex began to understand that this was a trial, a test of his mind and courage. The house wasn't evil, not exactly. It was a being with purpose, seeking to teach or perhaps to select. Every room, every object, every light and shadow was part of its intelligence, guiding him, shaping him, learning him. By evening, Alex was exhausted but more aware. He understood that try to fight the house was useless. It had intelligence beyond his understanding, and would always be one step ahead. The only way forward was to communicate, to learn its language, to adapt. He noticed the symbols on the walls glowing brighter as he focused. He whispered to himself, I have to survive. I have to understand before it decides for me. As he settled into the main hall for the night, the hum grew softer, almost comforting. The lights above him pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The shadows lingered in the corners, quiet but present. Alex realized something terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. He was no longer just a visitor in this house. He was part of it, and the house was no longer just observing him. It was aware of him, thinking with him, testing him. The real challenge had only just begun, and Alex knew that. The house's intelligence would not rest until it had revealed all of its secrets. Alex had learned one thing. The house was alive and intelligent. It could read his movements, anticipate his actions, and twist reality around him. He realized that brute force would never work. No amount of pulling doors or smashing windows would free him. The house was playing a game, and if he wanted to survive, he had to learn the rules. He began experimenting cautiously, testing boundaries. He hid behind furniture that floated slightly above the ground, and the chair shifted to cover him more, almost like it was helping. He ran down hallways, turning corners quickly, but the floor subtly guided him back. Every move he made seemed expected, as if the house had already anticipated it. Alex realized that to escape, he had to think like the house, to anticipate its thoughts, not just its movements. Hours passed as he tried different strategies. He left objects in the hallways, hoping to distract it. Sometimes the furniture moved on its own, blocking his path, sometimes opening new ones. The lights followed him like curious eyes, and the shadows danced closer, almost threatening. He realized that the house was not malevolent. It wasn't trying to hurt him, at least not yet. It was testing him, studying him, learning what he could do, what he feared, and what he didn't know about himself. Then he found it, a small room tucked behind a twisting hallway. Inside was a journal, left by a previous owner. The pages were old and yellowed, but filled with sketches and notes of impossible architecture, symbols, and strange observations. Alex read carefully, heart pounding, discovering that the house had chosen other humans before. Some had left, some had vanished, and some had never been seen again. The previous owner had written warnings, cryptic but clear. Do not try to fight it. Do not ignore it. You must understand its mind, or it will trap you forever. Alex shivered, but he also felt a spark of hope. The journal hinted at a secret, a core room that seemed to be the heart of the house. He had to find it. Maybe it held the key to understanding how the house worked. He followed the faint humming that grew stronger with every step. The walls pulsed, guiding him, almost beckoning him forward. He finally reached a door unlike any other, glowing faintly with a soft, alien light. The air around it felt electric, vibrating with energy. Alex hesitated, then pushed it open slowly. Inside was a circular room, the floor and walls covered in glowing symbols. At the center hovered a strange, rotating core of light. Humming with immense power, he stepped closer, and the core pulsed in response, almost like it was alive. Suddenly, the room shifted, and Alex found himself staring at a shimmering portal. It was a swirling window to another world, a place unlike anything on Earth. Floating islands, glowing skies, creatures moving gracefully through the air. Alex's heart raced, part him terrified, part him exhilarated. The house seemed to be showing him, inviting him, daring him to step through. He stepped back, unsure if it was safe. The portal pulsed, and a whisper reached his mind. Step forward or remain trapped. Alex's instinct screamed to run, but curiosity burned stronger. The house had brought him here for a reason, and he had to see it through. He took a deep breath, stepping closer, and felt a strange energy wrap around him. The lights in the room danced wildly. The shadows stretched as if warning him. Alex reached out toward the portal, hesitating at the edge. The core pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, the symbols on the walls forming patterns he almost understood. It was as if the house was communicating with him directly, testing his courage. He glanced back at the hallways he had wandered, the rooms he had explored. The house had guided him here, teaching him without words, forcing him to adapt. And now it was daring him to take the next step, to cross the threshold into the unknown. He finally stepped through, and the world changed instantly. The air was lighter, filled with strange scents, and the colors of the sky seemed unreal. Creatures with glowing eyes and translucent bodies floated gracefully around him. Alex realized that this was no ordinary place. It was an alien world, and the house had brought him here for a reason he didn't yet understand. But even as he marveled, he felt the house's presence behind him. It was watching, waiting, testing. Alex knew he had taken the first step into something far larger than he had imagined. And the house's true purpose was still a mystery that would demand all of his courage, intelligence, and wits to survive. Alex stepped through the shimmering portal, and instantly, the world changed around him. The air felt different, lighter, and tinged with strange, sweet smells. The sky above glowed with swirling colors, pinks, purples, and greens blending in ways that made his head spin. Floating islands drifted lazily in the distance, connected by bridges of light that seemed to shimmer and bend. Creatures moved gracefully through the air, some with wings like glass, others glowing from within. Alex took a cautious step forward, feeling the ground beneath him pulse slightly, almost like it was alive. Every instinct told him to run back to the house, but curiosity pulled him deeper. He noticed the creatures watching him silently, not threatening, just observing. Some moved closer, tilting their glowing bodies as if trying to communicate. Alex raised his hand slowly, speaking softly. "I mean no harm. I just want to understand." The creatures didn't respond with words, but images flashed in his mind. He saw glimpses of their world, cities that floated high above the clouds, glowing towers, and beings working with strange tools of light. Alex realized he wasn't just seeing visions, he was connected, somehow sharing their perception. The house had brought him here to teach him, to show him, and the creatures were part of its lesson, guides in this alien world. Alex walked carefully along one of the bridges of light, marveling at the impossible geometry of the islands. Each step felt deliberate, as if the house was guiding him along a path it had chosen. He wondered what it wanted from him, why it had selected him. A sense of both fear and excitement rose in his chest. He knew that leaving this place without understanding it might be impossible. As he explored, the creature began to interact more directly. A small, translucent being floated beside him, circling slowly. Images of shapes, movements, and symbols entered his mind, showing him patterns and connections. He realized these were lessons, ways to understand the alien world and the house itself. The house was not just a building, it was a teacher, and the creatures were messengers. Everything here existed to communicate, to guide, and to test him. Hours or maybe days passed. Time felt meaningless here. Alex tried to learn as much as he could, copying the movements and gestures of the creatures. He touched floating objects, and they responded, pulsing with light. The visions became clearer, showing the origins of the house, created by an alien race to select humans capable of understanding and adapting. The house had chosen him because of his curiosity, his courage, and his intelligence, and now it was pushing him to take the next step, to truly adapt. Alex's thoughts raced. Could he survive this? Could he truly understand the house and the alien world? He realized he was changing, his mind stretching to grasp things it never could before. He felt a connection to creatures and the floating islands, as if part of him belonged here now. But even as he marveled, he felt the pull of the house behind him. It reminded him that it was always watching, always aware, always testing. Suddenly, a vision struck him clearly. The house itself was alive, a guardian of his alien knowledge. It had been placed on Earth as a test, selecting those it deemed worthy. The creatures, the islands, even the portal. Everything was part of his plan. Alex felt both awe and fear, realizing the house was far greater than he had imagined. He whispered to himself, "I have to learn, I have to survive, and I have to adapt." As he stood on the bridge of light, the creatures gathered around him, forming patterns that glowed brightly. The house hummed faintly in his mind, almost like approval, or maybe a warning. Alex understood one terrifying truth. This was not a place to visit casually. Once you entered, you became part of his plan, and the house would not let you go until it had tested you completely. He felt the weight of the lesson pressing on him, and the responsibility of surviving this alien world. And in that moment, he knew the real challenge was only beginning. The house had chosen him, and now he had to face the full extent of its intelligence, its power, and its purpose. Alex had spent hours, maybe even days, in the alien world, learning the strange gestures and movements of the creatures. He felt his mind stretching in ways he had never imagined. Every step, every motion, every thought seemed to be observed by the house. He realized that fighting it was useless, and the only way forward was to communicate, to understand, and to adapt. Back in the main hall of the house, the lights floated above him in patterns that pulsed softly. The shadows lingered in the corners. Watching, waiting, Alex began experimenting, moving his hands in rhythms, speaking softly, slowly, subtly. The lights responded, floating faster, then slower, forming shapes in the air. He understood, somehow, that the house was teaching him a language, not words, but movements and patterns. Every pulse of light, every shift of the shadows, was part of a dialogue. He spent hours practicing, repeating gestures, focusing on the symbols on the walls. The floating objects seemed to respond with approval when he got it right. It was exhausting, but Alex felt a spark of hope. He was learning how to exist inside the house. He noticed that when he followed the patterns correctly, doors opened slightly, hallways shifted favorably. The house wasn't punishing him. It was guiding him, testing his intelligence and patience. One night, as he moved through the hallways, the glowing core in the core room pulsed more intensely. Alex felt a connection he had never felt before, almost as if the house was sharing thoughts. He touched the core lightly, and visions flooded his mind. Alien cities, floating islands, creatures, and the history of the house itself. It had been built by an alien race to test humans, to see if they could adapt to intelligence and knowledge beyond Earth. The house was not evil, but it demanded respect, focus, and understanding. And Alex realized a terrifying truth. The house chose who could leave and who could not, based on their ability to learn and adapt. He returned to the main hall, practicing his communication again. This time, the house responded more quickly, objects moving smoothly, lights pulsing in rhythm, shadows forming shapes he could almost read. He whispered to himself, "I have to survive. I have to understand." And slowly, the house began showing him visions in more detail, teaching him patterns, rules, and lessons. He began to understand its logic, the way it thought, the way it tested him. He even started noticing the smallest hints, subtle shifts that guided him through tricky rooms. The house had become a teacher, and he was its student. But the house was not simple, not predictable. Every success brought new challenges, rooms changing unexpectedly, objects moving in ways he had never seen. Sometimes he felt frustrated, almost defeated, but he reminded himself that adaptation was key. He realized that fear was useless, and curiosity and focus were his greatest tools. The alien creatures he had met through the portal seemed to appear briefly now, guiding him subtly. Images flashed in his mind, showing him the rules of the house, and how he could coexist with its intelligence. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Alex reached a moment of clarity. He could communicate with the house in ways he hadn't before. Gestures, thoughts, and patterns aligned, and he felt a strange calm. The house pulsed softly around him, almost like a heartbeat, and he realized it earned a measure of trust. He could move through hallways without panic. Objects responded predictably. Doors opened when he needed. He was no longer entirely a captive. He was a participant in the house's intelligence. And with that understanding, a new door appeared in the hall, glowing brighter than any other. Alex approached it carefully, heart pounding. The house hummed gently, almost like encouragement. He reached out, touching the door lightly, and it opened a swirling portal. Through it, he saw glimpses of the alien world again, the floating islands and glowing creatures. He understood that the house was offering him a choice: step forward and embrace what it taught him, or stay behind and risk being trapped forever. Alex swallowed hard, knowing that he had changed. He was no longer the same person who bought the $200 alien house as a joke. The house had taught him patience, focus, courage, and understanding, and now he had to decide if he was ready to continue into the unknown or remain within its walls forever. The hum of the house pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and Alex realized the final test was not about fear, or strength, or even intelligence. It was about trust in the house, and trust in himself. Alex stood before the glowing door, the swirling portal showing glimpses of the alien world he had explored. Every part of him was tense, every instinct screaming both fear and curiosity. The house hummed softly around him, its lights pulsing in rhythm with a heartbeat. He realized that the house had led him here for a reason, testing him all this time. The lessons, the shifting rooms, the floating objects, even the whispers and shadows, all of it had prepared him for this moment. He remembered the first day he had stepped inside as a joke, how terrified he felt when the doors wouldn't open, when the shadows moved on their own, and now he had learned to communicate, to understand, and to adapt. The house had changed him, reshaped his mind and his perception of reality. He could feel it in every fiber of his being. He was no longer a visitor. He was part of the house, and yet beyond the portal, the alien world beckoned, promising knowledge, adventure, and the unknown. Alex hesitated, hand hovering above the glowing surface. He thought of everything he had endured, the fear, the confusion, the endless tests, but he also thought of the connection he now had with the house, the trust he had earned. The house pulsed faster, almost impatiently, as if urging him to decide. He realized the choice was simple in words, but impossible in reality. Step forward and embrace the unknown, or step back and remain part of the house forever. With a deep breath, Alex stepped forward slowly. The portal swallowed him in a swirl of light and energy. The alien world rushed toward him, filling his senses with colors, sounds, and visions beyond comprehension. He felt the creatures from before moving alongside him, guiding him, welcoming him. And yet, the house remained behind, its hum lingering in his mind. He could feel it watching, protecting, and testing him even as he left its walls. The world outside the portal was incredible, more beautiful and strange than anything he could imagine. Floating islands drifted in the glowing sky. Creatures moved gracefully in patterns of light. Alex felt exhilarated, alive in a way he had never known. But deep in his mind, a soft pulse reminded him of the house. He realized it was not just a place. It was a presence, a living intelligence that had chosen him for reasons he might never fully understand. As he looked around, a small flicker of unease returned. In the distance, a glowing light appeared, a shape like the house, or maybe another one. A thought struck him sharply. Perhaps this was just the beginning. The house had taught him, adapted him, and now it was testing him in ways he could not predict. He swallowed hard, realizing that freedom and understanding were not the same, and that the house, alive and intelligent, would always be a part of his life, whether he wanted it or not. Alex took a cautious step forward, feeling the alien air fill his lungs. He knew that it had changed forever. The fear that had gripped him on the first day was gone, replaced with focus, courage, and curiosity, and yet the story was not truly over. He could feel it in every pulse of light and hum of energy. The house had chosen him, and perhaps one day it would choose again. But for now, Alex was ready, stepping boldly into the unknown, aware that the adventure, the lessons, and the intelligence that had tested him would follow him forever. And as he vanished into the swirling colors of the alien world, the house pulsed softly behind him, waiting for the next visitor, the next mind to test.